الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. The last couple of days we've been speaking about this challenge that religious pluralism poses for us. And in preparation for that, I've shared with you some ideas to help us to understand why it is that there are so many different religions and how this could possibly fit into the divine plan. Yesterday I shared some verses with you that helped to emphasize the ideas I'd given you 2 days ago, that this is in fact the case, that all religions are the same. It's all one religion, inna dina inda Allah al-Islam. Submission to the divine will is the universal message of all prophets. If there's a difference over time between one religious law and different religious law, it's the difference because of the times in which that law has been revealed, based on the needs and the dictates of those people, and that could change over time, not in a radical way where you have very stark differences between them, but rather it's the difference of different cultures, different kinds of worship, maybe more intense, maybe less intense, maybe more strict and less strict, and that's the nature of the difference between the different laws that Allah sent down. There's another passage I want to share with you that has a similar message. This is in Surah Al-A'raf. There's a set of verses from verse 156 to 158. So 156, actually, let me just summarize it so we can get into 157. 156 is the tail end of the story of Musa alayhi salam on the mountain, where he's gone up with these 70 selected people from his community. They're demanding that they want to see God the way they expect he must have seen God. And they have these this kind of misunderstanding of what it means to be a prophet, and they want to be able to see God the way he did. They say, we're not going to believe in you until we see him. And so he says, this is impossible, but if you insist, then let's go and I'll prove to you that we can't see God. And so he goes through this whole thing, and all this happens. Allah shows himself to the mountain, manifests himself, the mountain explodes, everyone's killed except for Musa, he's knocked out, and all this happens. When he finally wakes up, he makes a prayer and he asks Allah to give goodness and reward in this world and the next to his people. And Allah responds by saying that those who reject your invitation and reject religion, they will be punished with hellfire, and those who accept and follow will be rewarded. Then Allah goes on to describe who are those people who are going to be worthy of reward. الذين, this is verse 157, الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. Right, so these are people who of course follow your law, Moses, but they're also the same people who are going to follow the messenger and the prophet who is unlettered, Ummi. Right, so he's talking about the prophecies that Moses is being given, and through him by extension to the Bani Israel, that there will be a prophet who will come who is this Rasul Nabi Ummi, الَّذِي يَجِدُونَهُ مَكْتُوبًا عِنْدَهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ, whose description they find written in the Torah itself. Right, so the prophecies for Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are written in the Torah itself. Fit Torati wal Injil, in both the Torah and the Injil. What are the descriptions of this prophet? How is he described? يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. So one of the important descriptions of the prophet is that he will enjoin good and forbid evil. وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ, he will make those things that are good halal for them. وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ, and he will make those things that are filth and those things that are bad for them haram for them. There's a good message in there as well. We should understand that the Sharia is based on real benefit and real harm. If Allah makes something halal or wajib for us, it's because there's great benefit in it. And if He makes something haram for us, it's because there's some harm in it. And it's not some arbitrary rule that He just willy-nilly says that let's make this haram and this halal, let's just play with them and see how things go. But there's real benefit, real harm, and that's what the wise law of the wise God is based on. وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِسْرَهُمْ, he continues in the description of the Prophet, he will lift the burden of the covenant that was made with them. that covenant which was very strict, which had very difficult laws, right, that is now being lifted from the Bani Israel once they follow this new prophet who's going to come. وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ, those chains and fetters that were binding them. I don't know if you've ever experienced Jewish law. I once sat next to a Hasidic Jew in an airplane, and he was, as he was trying to figure out how to abide by his law, basically his entire trip he was just engaged with trying to figure out that, okay, I ate this thing that has a U on it, and so 6 hours later I can eat this other thing that has a K on it, and like all these different things, and it was so complex and complicated, he himself couldn't keep track of everything. And he was kind of bothering everyone else. The flight attendant was trying to give him a snack, and he was like, no, what's the letter on this? And he was checking this and checking all of this, and it was so overwhelming for him and for everyone around him that it became very, very difficult. And his whole time was just occupied with that. Right? And so these are the aghlal allati kanat alayhim, these chains and fetters of this incredibly difficult law, which, as I mentioned yesterday, was not Allah's injustice that He's being unfair to them. The law would have been as easy for them as it is for us now. But it was because of them and because of their stubbornness and because of their attitude of always trying to find the way out and always trying to ask questions in a way that was not to seek understanding, but rather to challenge and to find ways for them to get out of things. That's why Allah made things harder for them. Okay. So the new prophet who is prophesied for them will be a source of mercy for them, in that those chains and fetters of this very difficult law will be lifted and they will no longer be bound to that. فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِهِ وَعَزَّرُوهُ وَنَصَرُوهُ وَاتَّبَعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ مَعَهُ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. So those Ahlul Kitab, those Christians and Jews who believe in him, in this new prophet, and they respect him and they aid him and they follow the light which will be sent with him, which will be sent down with him, the Quran. Right? They'll not only follow him as a person, but the light which will be sent down with him, those are the truly successful. So this verse also corroborates the same idea I was talking about, that it's not the divine intention, it's not Allah's intention that Judaism should continue to the Day of Judgment as one strain, and Christianity is another strain, and Islam is another strain, that they should exist in parallel. Rather, He's telling them in this verse, he's narrating the story of Moses, that the prophecy was sent down to Moses that a prophet will come, and the job of the Jews is to follow the new prophet. And if they do, then they will be muflih, they will be successful. Right? Not that they should say, well, that's fine for the Arabs, but we're Jews and we're going to follow Moses and continue, we'll stand by him. No, to stand by Moses, you have to stand by everything he taught you, including the prophecy that he taught you, that there will come a prophet who will replace, he'll be the next to the line. Follow him. If you want to follow me, you got to follow him. And he'll be the best thing for you, he'll be a source of mercy for you, a guidance for you, all of this, if you follow him the way you're supposed to. Then in 158, the next verse says, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ. Now he's speaking more generally to all people. Right? So this idea that Islam is just for one segment of people, it's only for the Arabs, only for Middle Easterners, that's not the case. This is for all people. Ya ayyuhan nas, inni rasulullah ilaykum. So now the Prophet, in response to this prophecy which has been sent down through Moses, now the Prophet's told to now introduce yourself as the fulfillment of the prophecy of Moses. Right? So now you, O Prophet, tell all people, inni rasulullah ilaykum. I am that messenger of God to you. Jami'an, to all of you. الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The messenger of that God who is the possessor and who has the dominion of the heavens and the earth in his hands. لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. So believe in God and believe in me as his messenger. النَّبِيِّ الْأُمِّي الَّذِي يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَكَلِمَاتِهِ. The same messenger, prophet, ummi. He mentioned those same three key words that were in the prophecy of the Jews. Right? The one who believes in God, don't think I'm calling you to some other religion. I also believe in the same God that Moses believed in and you also believe in. وَكَلِمَاتِهِ, in all of his words that he sent down through all of the revelation to all of his prophets. وَاتَّبِعُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. And follow him, meaning follow me as the messenger of God, so that you can be guided. Alright, so this verse also helps us to corroborate what we've been talking about. That this is Islam is meant as the culmination of all of these divine religions. And those who are true Christians and true Jews and true followers of Ibrahim and Nuh, if they still exist, they should all be following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that set of verses in Surah Al-A'raf speaks it does mention Torah and Injil, but it's mainly speaking to the Bani Israel, the Jews of the time. There's another surah in Surah Al-Saf, we have a reference to Isa and his prophecy. I mentioned this earlier, let me just read through this verse quickly. وَإِذْ قَالَ عِيسَى بْنُ مَرْيَمَ, this is Surah Al-Saf, chapter 61, verse 7. وَإِذْ قَالَ عِيسَى بْنُ مَرْيَمَ يَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلِ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ. So remember the time, remember is the keyword for stories, وَإِذْ قَالَ. So remember when Jesus, the son of Mary, told the Bani Israel, O children of Israel, I am God's messenger to you. Right, which tells us he's a Jewish prophet. He's not meant to start a new religion. He was a Jewish prophet, the culmination of Moses' tradition. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيَّ مِنَ التَّوْرَةِ. I have come to confirm that which is that Torah which has come before me. So the same Torah that was there, I'm here not to, even in the Beatitudes in Matthew, I believe it's chapter 5, Jesus says the same thing. I haven't come to abrogate the laws and to cancel out the laws of the prophets. I've come to reaffirm them. And it's the same kind of thing that he's being quoted as saying in the Quran as well. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيَّ مِنَ التَّوْرَةِ وَمُبَشِّرًا, and also to give you glad tidings, بِرَسُولٍ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِي اسْمُهُ أَحْمَدُ, of a messenger who will come after me, whose name is Ahmad. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ قَالُوا هَذَا سِحْرٌ مُبِينٌ. But when those same Christians who had heard the prophecies of Isa, saying that Ahmad will come after me, when Ahmad finally comes to them, proves himself to them, what do they say? It's a magician, it's all magic. Okay. Alright, so those verses then help us to round out that picture, to corroborate what we've been talking about, that this is in fact the case, inna dina inda Allah in Islam, and this Islam that the Prophet has brought is the culmination of the Islam that all of the Prophets have brought. Recite the salawat. Now, with that foundation, let's move on to some of the more challenging verses of the Quran, which seem to challenge this understanding. Please, once again, if you all will please take care of your children, make sure they are sitting with you. Even the youngest of them, they can be disciplined. And don't think that if they're 1-year-old and 2-year-old, then they're free to go everywhere. If they're bothering other people, then it's your responsibility not to let that happen. Alright. So this, I'm going to read to you from this new publication, the Study Quran. I see a copy of it over on the bookshelf as well. So this is a publication that's just come out in the last few months, maybe 6 months or so. And it's a new translation with a good commentary of the Quran, both from a Sunni and a Shi'i perspective. It's headed up by Sayyid Hussain Nasr, a Shi'i student of Allama Tabatabai, and one of the leading experts on Islamic studies in the West, especially for Shi'i studies. In the end of this publication, there are a series of essays. One of the essays deals with pluralism that we've been talking about. And if you have the chance, if you have the resource of the book, I would encourage you to read this essay. It's by Joseph Lombard. It's called The Quranic View of Sacred History and Other Religions. So what does the Quran have to say about other religions? This is, in this essay, Lombard expresses this idea of pluralism, which is the same idea that his teacher, Sayyid Hussain Nasr, also espouses. So I've been mentioning, hinting in the last couple of days that there are even Muslims, even prominent scholars amongst the Muslims who espouse this idea of pluralism. So Sayyid Hussain Nasr is one of those. So this essay is a really good explanation of the pluralistic viewpoint. And they've selected some of these verses that I'm going to read to you now that seem to indicate that Allah's intention was to have parallel religions all existing at the same time. And if you're a Jew, you shouldn't convert to Islam. You should be a very good Jew. If you're a Christian, don't convert to Islam. Be a good Christian. Right? And that somehow the sacredness, that there's a core of goodness in that religion. If you can discover that and connect to that, that's better for you. That's what's intended for you, not for you to jump religions and switch to another religion. This is kind of the result of their thinking. Let me read this one section to you from the essay. From a Quranic perspective, he says, there are thus different ways of revering and worshipping God for different human communities. God has not revealed one law, but many laws. And to each law corresponds a particular path that is based upon the performance of rites particular to that form of worship. Okay. So far so good. We've talked about this as well, that different times dictate different kinds of law, and so Allah revealed those laws for different people. All that's fine. And he quotes a verse from Surah Al-Hajj that corroborates that and gives us the idea that there are different manasik that were given for different people. We have our manasik of prayer and Hajj and these kinds of things. Others had different kinds of manasik that were similar but different. The notion that previous scriptures have been abrogated in the sense of being nullified or excessively distorted to such an extent that their message no longer reflects the particularity of the original teachings, as some Muslims maintain, I being one of them, would seem to be contradicted by verses such as the following. Right, clear so far? So he's saying that the idea that there are multiple religions, multiple laws, that's fine. We accepted that. We said that they're in series, not in parallel. Now he's saying that this idea that a subsequent religion abrogates the previous one, the subsequent law of Christianity abrogates Moses' law, or Prophet Muhammad's law abrogates the Christian or Jewish law, this is something that he's saying is false. It's contradicted by the following verses. The first one in 543, this is Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 43, and how is it that they come to you for judgment, O Prophet, when they have the Torah wherein is God's judgment? So why is it that the Jews are coming to you, Muhammad, when they already have the Torah? They don't need you, they have the Torah to judge by. And in the Torah is God's judgment. So why do they come to you and seek your law when they have their own law? They should go back and look at the Torah. Right? Do you see how that seems to contradict what we've been talking about? It's not saying that the Torah is now defunct, they shouldn't be going back to the Torah, they should scrap that and come and ask you for the judgment and see what the Quran has to say. They say, no, why do they look to you when they have the Torah? وَفِي حُكْمُ اللَّهِ, in which there's the judgment of God. Another verse, also Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 68. So 568. Say, O people of the book, you stand on naught till you observe the Torah and the Gospel. Meaning, you don't have anything in you're not doing what you should be doing until you stand by the Torah and the Injil. And that which has been sent down unto you from your Lord. Right? So it's encouraging them to go and make sure you're abiding by the Bible and the Torah. That's what your duty is. Until you do that, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing before God. In the same vein, 547, another verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 47 says, of the Christians, let the people of the Gospel, meaning the Injil, judge by that which God has sent down therein. So the first one is about the Torah, that the followers of the Torah go back to that judgment, and let the followers of the Injil go back to the Injil for judgment. It would be contradictory for the Quran to speak of the efficacy of judging by the Torah and the Gospel if we were to also maintain that these scriptures have been abrogated or excessively distorted. It would also make little sense to say that the religions in which these scriptures are applicable are defunct, or were defunct at the time that the Quran was revealed, for it is the methodologies developed within the religions that would... Anyway, he goes on to some other ideas, but this is what I wanted to share. Right, so these verses he's quoted to say that it doesn't seem that the Quran is abrogating, that this is the latest version, and that everyone's duty is to follow the Quran. From these verses it seems that those who follow the Torah and the Injil should go back to those books and just be faithful followers of those books, and not switch over to becoming Muslim with a capital M and following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Looking at these verses, the same section that he's taken these three verses from Surah Al-Ma'idah, if you look at the whole section, you see how his interpretation is skewed. Let's start back a couple of verses. This is Surah Al-Ma'idah, verses 41 to 48. Right, 41 to 48. I encourage you also to go back and look at these sections of the Quran. These are challenging ideas, and like I mentioned, if you were in college or younger, then you're already exposed to these kinds of ideas constantly. And even those of you who are not at work and in community, wherever you're engaged with non-Muslims, you're going to be faced with these kinds of ideas. Because pluralism is a very easy solution to dealing with diversity of religion. To have the opinion that I'm trying to espouse and trying to work towards, to say that Islam is right and other religions is wrong, is very difficult. How do you espouse that and still be tolerant of people? How do you espouse that and still be respectful of other people? That's an important question that we need to deal with, and we will deal with it, inshallah, in coming lectures. Right now, I just want to deal with, let's deal theoretically with truth and falsehood and what's right, what are we supposed to believe. Then we can talk about now, how do I deal with people, how do I interact with people? What does this mean? Does this mean I should be arrogant and be self-righteous and say, I'm right, everyone else is wrong? Should I be intolerant of people? Should I be disrespectful of other religions? So absolutely not, and we'll have to talk about why that's the case and how we can make a case for that later on. But right now, we just need to look at the Quran, try to understand what is it that Allah is telling us about how He wanted these religions to play out. What was His intention in sending all these different prophets with different messages? So 541 says, Ya ayyuha rasul la yahzunka alladhina yusari'una fil kufr. So there's a background to this story, and understanding that will help us to understand the verses as well. There was, in the time of the Prophet, an incident that took place in Khaybar amongst the Jews. So this is before the Battle of Khaybar, when the Jews were still strong in Khaybar.
Keep the microphone up a little bit, because I think that's why it's making you
Okay. There's a little bit of a disturbance every once in a while. I'm not sure why that's the case. So in Khaybar, there was an incident where some notable people, is there still something wrong with the mic? It's okay. There was an incident where some wealthy, powerful people engaged in adultery. Okay? And the law for adultery, these were married people who engaged in this adultery. And so the rule that they had on the books in Jewish law was that if you're married and you engage in extramarital affairs, then it's a stoning to death. Right? The same as what we have in Islam now, but at this time the Islamic ruling was not yet known. And these were wealthy, powerful people, and this wouldn't do to have them executed. And so the Jews wanted to find a way out. So the Khaybari Jews, according to this hadith that's narrated in Tabarsi's Majal Bayan and other places, the Khaybari Jews sent word to their cousins and their allies in Medina, the Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, and so forth, and they said, here's the issue. Can you go to this Muhammad of yours and see what he says about this? Does he confirm the same ruling, or does he have some new ruling that will kind of let them off the hook? Right? So they're shopping for fatwas, they're shopping for laws. And so Ka'b ibn Ashraf and others who are the leaders of the Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, they come to the Prophet and say, this issue, what do you say about someone who does zina as a muhsan, as someone who's married, if they commit adultery? And so first of all, the Prophet says, are you going to accept what I say? I'm not going to judge based on your rules. But whatever I say, will you accept? They say, yes, whatever you say, we'll accept. And so he says, the ruling is that since they're married, they must be stoned to death. And so they say, no, this doesn't do it. They reject that ruling. Right? So the verses now come down to address this whole situation. The Prophet's he's under pressure. If he can please them, right, he gains them as allies, which is good politically for him. That makes good political sense, to gain the Jews as allies by kind of giving them what they want. The munafiqeen, the hypocrites, who are also allied with the Jews, they're also in favor of the Prophet, being a little bit more flexible. Why so rigid? Why stick with what's on the books? Kind of work with us and keep our allies together. These kinds of things. And so the munafiqeen are also pressuring the Prophet to give the Jews what they want. The Quran comes down and says, Ya ayyuha rasul, O messenger, la yahzunka alladhina yusari'una fil kufr min alladhina qalu amanna bi afwahihim wa lam tu'min qulubuhum wa min alladhina hadu. So let not those people who are kind of eager in their kufr, they're eager to remain and to act in their kufr, let them not bother you and sadden you. Who are those people? They're two groups. الَّذِينَ قَالُوا, those who say with their tongues that we believe, but in their hearts they say we don't believe. Munafiqeen. And secondly, مِنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا, and those who are Jews. Alright, so these two groups, don't let them bother you, because they're reveling in their own kufr. سَمَّعُونَ لِلْكَذِبِ, these Jews in particular, they are those who listen to lies. Right? So the group that's come to you, they are listening to lies from whom سَمَّعُونَ لِقَوْمٍ آخَرِينَ لَمْ يَأْتُوكَ, they're listening to these lies and hearing these lies from another group of people who hasn't come to you. So you have one group who are kind of the masterminds and the scholars, these kinds of people who know the Torah, know what the rule is, and are telling these guys who are the messengers who are going to the Prophet, go and ask him if he tells you what we want him to tell you, which is that they shouldn't be killed, then great. And accept that, and we have justification now for abandoning our law and going with this new rule. Because what can we do? He's the ruler. We have to abide by his rule, right? And if he doesn't give you what we want, and he tells you that we have to stone them, then don't accept that. So they're listening to another group of people, kind of behind the scenes. لَمْ يَأْتُوكَ يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَوَاضِعِهِ. Those people who are behind the scenes, they are adulterating the scripture, putting things in the wrong place and mixing up rulings, telling you what you want and these kinds of things. يَقُولُونَ إِنْ أُوتِيتُمْ هَذَا فَخُذُوهُ. Those people tell these people, the messengers, if you are given this ruling that we want, then فَخُذُوهُ, then take it from the Prophet. وَإِنْ لَمْ تُؤْتَوْهُ فَاحْذَرُوا. But if you don't receive what we want, the ruling that we desire, then don't accept it, then watch out. وَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ فِتْنَتَهُ فَلَنْ تَمْلِكَ لَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. Then Allah addresses the Prophet and says that those whom Allah wants to test, those whom Allah tries in such a way where they have these multiple pressures and they give in to the wrong pressures, then you, Prophet, don't feel bad if you can't convince them and you can't win them over. That's not your job. Right? So it's a tasliya, kind of a reassurance to the Prophet that these people are being tested by God and they're failing the test miserably. You don't feel bad. You do your job and that's all you have to do. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ لَمْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَن يُطَهِّرَ قُلُوبَهُم. These people who are coming to you, these are people whose hearts Allah does not wish to purify. Of course, because they themselves don't want their hearts to be purified. Allah doesn't hold back purification of a heart from a willing heart. If the person is willing to be purified, then Allah will help that person to purify his heart. So the fact that Allah has not purified them and doesn't want to purify them means that they themselves are so filthy and so putrid inside that Allah cannot, without forcing them, which He doesn't do, He cannot purify them because they're really a lost cause. لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا خِزْيٌ وَلَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Right? In this life they will be disgraced, and in the hereafter they will have a painful punishment, a terrible punishment waiting for them. Alright, so that's really to the Prophet, to fortify him and let him know where he stands and where they stand in God's eyes. سَمَّاعُونَ لِلْكَذِبِ. This is the next verse number 42. سَمَّاعُونَ لِلْكَذِبِ أَكَّالُونَ لِلسُّحْتِ. Those scholars of theirs who are feeding them this information from the back, they, actually the people who come, they're listening to lies. Their scholars are أَكَّالُونَ لِلسُّحْتِ. Suht is a word that's used for, it seems to be a reference to bribery here. Right? Suht means the peel of a fruit, or the peel that you take and you skin it away and you throw it away. That's called suht. So the commentators say it's a reference to bribery. That's a kind of something that you gain which you have no right to gain. All right. So this indicates there's a bribery going on, that those who are passing the judgment are passing it because they have some self-interest, some ulterior motive, that these wealthy families will pay them off and give them what they want if they pass this ruling. And perhaps they're even trying to offer a similar bribe to the Prophet. There's no mention of that, but that's the kind of people they are. They think they can buy off the judges and their muftis by giving them certain benefits. فَإِنْ جَاءُوكَ فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ أَوْ أَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ. So now Allah prepares the Prophet. He says, when these guys come to you, you have two options. Either you can judge based on Islamic ruling and tell them what the ruling is. That's one choice you have. Or you can abandon them and say, I don't have any ruling. You go back to your Torah, ask your scholars, and you figure out yourself. Why is this the case? Because they're not Muslim. These people haven't yet accepted Islam. The Prophet is under no obligation to judge on a practical level. Right? The practice follows belief. If a person doesn't yet believe, then they're not responsible for the practice. Not responsible, not the right word, but they're not anyway, the ruler is not liable to give that judgment to them. So the Prophet has the choice. He can deem what's in the best interest of him and his movement and his government, whether he wants to engage with them, or because they're already lost causes, as Allah has told him, then just tell them go back and figure it out yourself, and I have no ruling. If you want to become Muslim, then I'm at your service. But as long as you're standing by your Jewish tradition, then you're on your own. وَإِن تُعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ فَلَن يَضُرُّوكَ شَيْئًا. And if you ignore them and tell them to go away, don't worry, they're not going to hurt you. Right? This judgment, there's no negative consequence for not giving them what they want. Right? Not giving them a judgment. وَإِنْ حَكَمْتَ فَحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْقِسْطِ. But if you choose the first option and you choose to give the judgment, then you must give the right judgment. Right? No playing games, no giving them what they want to hear. You got to give it to them straight, based on the Islamic rule. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. Because Allah loves those who are fair and those who are just. So you have to give the just rule. Then Allah says in verse number 43, وَكَيْفَ يُحَكِّمُونَكَ وَعِنْدَهُمُ التَّوْرَاةِ. How is it that these people even come to you? Right? This is the verse that Joseph Lombard just mentioned in the essay as well. Right? So here's the verse out of context, in context that he was mentioning out of context. كيف يحكمونك وعندهم التوراة فيها حكم الله ثم يتولون من بعد ذلك وما أولئك بالمؤمنين. How is it that these Jews even come to you and make you their judge? They do tahkim and make you the hakim over their case. And how is this even possible when they have the Torah with them, in which there is the ruling of God? The judgment of God in this particular case is present in the Torah, that the Zani Muhsan and the Zaniya Muhsana must be stoned to death. ثُمَّ يَتَوَلَّوْنَ مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ. But despite the fact that these Jews have the Torah in which the judgment of God is there, they have turned their back on it. Right? وَمَا أُولَٰئِكَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And they don't even believe in what's in the Torah. Now they're coming to you. They don't even believe in their own book and their own prophets, as evidenced by the fact that they're trying to find a way out and try to find a way to avoid practicing the Jewish law. They don't even believe in that, and now they're coming and making you the judge. If they don't even believe in Moses, where do you stand in their books? So the verse, Allah is ridiculing these people, these Jews, for having come and made the prophet their arbiter when they've abandoned the book that they have. They don't even accept that, and now they're making the Prophet a judge. They clearly don't accept the Quran or the Prophet, and this is their station. Right? So they're not even believers in what they have. How are they going to ever become believers in you and the truth that you have? All right. The time doesn't allow us to go further. We're going to have to stop right in the middle of this discussion, but inshallah, if you get a chance to look at the verses yourself, then it'll prepare us for tomorrow. The story continues, and then there's reference to the Bible and the Injil as well. Anyway, the whole story ends up giving us that context to understand what are those verses that the pluralists are claiming as evidence that the Torah and the Injil are currently valid in parallel with the Quran, whereas the verses themselves show us that this is not the case. Right? They are actually supposed to become Muslim and come to the Prophet. The only reason Allah is saying they should go back to the Torah is because at least that would be something. If they were at least good Jews, that would be something. But they're not even good Jews, and He's ridiculing them for that. So the verse is not meant to corroborate the Torah and say the Torah is perfect and it's great and it's just as it was revealed and it has everything, and they should just stick with that and abandon the Quran. But rather, no, they should, at very least, not be so dishonest that they reject the ruling that they know clearly in their own book. Start with that, be honest in your belief in Judaism, then maybe you have a chance to transfer and bridge over from that through the prophecies of Moses to find Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and become a proper Muslim. So let's open up for some questions on the topic. Try to keep it relevant to the topic that I've been speaking about.
Surah Araf, you said ayat number 57, right? The first one. And I think there was a reference to Nur. I think if I'm not correct, he said there was a reference to some Nur.
Not to Nuh alayhi salam.
He's saying to Nur.
Oh, to Nur, correct.
Yeah. And then you said the translation of Nur is Quran.
Correct.
The Prophet. Is it also our understanding, and my question is that, does it also mean Ali ibn Abi Talib?
So you might have a hadith that mention things like that, which we'll accept if they come from the Ahlul Bayt. But the apparent meaning of the verse is that it's referring to this light that is sent down. In Zal, Ali ibn Abi Talib was not sent down. from the heavens to the Prophet. He was born and this kind of thing. So the apparent meaning of the verse is that it's referring to the nur that's sent down with the Prophet as the Quran. Sometimes we do have a hadith where the imams will help us to understand some hidden meanings that we don't have access to through words. And so based on the hadith, we can accept it, that since the imam said it, we'll accept it. But we have no evidence for it other than the hadith of the imam, because these are things beyond words, and all we have access to is the words. So it's not a contradiction that it means this, so it can't mean Ali. It could mean both, but we have no access. We have no evidence besides the hadith to tell us that it means it could also refer to Ali. Yes.
So, in regards to your lecture today, while I understand that you're saying that we reject this idea that the Torah and the Injil may still be relevant, are we, by that account, rejecting the fact that though the people may follow Torah and Injil, they may still be those who submit to God, and those who may be entitled to, I mean, of course we can't say that they're entitled to heaven because that's a decision up to God, but are we saying that they can't be those who submit?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is another important question that we need to get to. So like I mentioned, right now what we're talking about is we're trying to figure out what's right, what's even theoretically, what's the what is Allah's perspective and how has He sent down these different religions? So we're trying to figure out the reality of it. Judgment and salvation is a separate issue. It's often conflated. Oftentimes, as soon as you express the idea of exclusivism, which is the opposite of pluralism, to say that Islam is correct, وَمَاذَا بَعْدَ الْحَقِّ إِلَّا الضَّلَالَ, that everything else besides truth is falsehood. As soon as you say that, then oftentimes people assume that what you mean is therefore everyone else is going to hell and all Muslims are going to paradise, which is obviously not the case. The question of judgment and salvation is a separate issue that's unrelated to the question of truth and falsehood. So I can, at the same time, establish that Islam is true and everything else is false, and at the same time there could be room for Allah to allow someone who's following a false religion to achieve salvation. If the person has a legitimate excuse before God, if he's not exposed to the truth, if he's pursuing the truth and isn't given access for whatever worldly reasons, he's not able to find the truth despite his good efforts, right? That person is not liable there then. Allah judges based on not only a standard of what is true, but more importantly, He judges us based on our opportunity to know the truth. What are our potentials and our opportunities? That's the standard that we're judged on. So if a person is not exposed to Islam, or if a Muslim is not exposed to tashayyu', right, that person is not liable. As long as they've done what they're supposed to do, Allah will judge that this person, he made his best effort, he wasn't able to find it, not for his own fault, but because of other circumstances. So that person, he was a good Christian, he was a good Jew, he was a good Sunni, or whatever it is, and he did whatever he could, whatever truth he knew, he followed it, then that person can also be given salvation. Similarly, a Muslim, a Shi'i, can certainly go to hellfire. There's nothing that immunes us just because we call ourselves Shi'i, that somehow we have a pass and we get out of jail free card. Obviously that's not the case. Sincerity of belief, righteousness of action, and so many other things that go into our salvation, and so there's no guarantee that just because you call yourself a Shi'i or kind of categorize yourself in that way, that somehow is automatically a get out of jail free card. Right? So it's not about judgment and salvation. That is an important question. I'll expound on it more in a subsequent lecture. But right now we're just talking about the theory of what's true and what's false, what's right and what's wrong. We can deal with the other aspects, judgment and tolerance and interaction with people in a different context, different lecture. So I think that's enough. That's all the time that we have for today. So we'll close with a dua. Allahumma, we ask you to shower your blessings and mercy on Prophet Muhammad and on his family. We ask you to forgive us for all of our sins and our shortcomings, guide us on the straight path, help us to be devoted followers of the Ahlul Bayt. Help us to always act in a way that's pleasing to you and to abstain from all that displeases you. Help us through these discussions to increase our knowledge, to increase our conviction in what is true, and give us the fortitude to always be with the truth and always to be against falsehood. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.